All right, let's get right into this. So I was actually not really having any ideas. So I went with I had a couple ideas in my head that I've been doing that I was doing since last week. One of them was success. I'm sure I'll find other content to talk about when it comes to that idea. And the other idea was obviously just Latin culture and history and race and things like that. But I'll start off by well, no, it's fine, it's fine. Okay, so we'll get right into it. So what was I talking about? I believe the last time I was talking about success. I talked about self development books and audio. What else did I talk about when it comes to success? I don't know. Somehow, you know what? I can combine the two of them. How about this? Why were the and I literally just thought about this. Really, how about we talk about why were the conquistadors so successful in in conquering such a large amount of land? So we can get into that, again, a lot of this is speculation. I am and I guess I wouldn't even say I'm self-proclaimed. I think it's kind of accepted that I am a history buff. I mean, I've studied all parts of history, and even taken it in school, like as an elective. I've taken world history as an elective, and I've studied it on my own. The last book that I read, like, it was a book this big, and it was that big in the cover, and it was like this thick. And that last book I read I think that was the last book that I read, and it was about, was it 7 years ago, over 7 years ago. Yeah, well over 7 years ago, 7 to 8 years ago. I read a book, and it was on Ottoman history, particularly the sultans. Sultan for them is like a king or a head position of a nation, and it was on the sultans, and I read about their customs, their daily lives, and then history and all their history. And that was the last book I read. Um, I have started to read. Anyways, I mean, other than that, why would I call myself a history buff? Well, I'll tell you this much too. I think I was about 11 years old when I got introduced to Age of Empires. This was really, I mean, to be very honest, I found Age of Empires to be more educating than any history course I ever took in regular school. Age of Empires was way more educating, way more realistic, way more interactive. This game came out in the 90s, in the late 90s, I think. It was a brilliant game, and really you learn a lot about history just from that. Now, oh, sorry. So yeah. So before that Ottoman book that I read, the book before that I had read, the second last book, was a book on the Mongolians, or the Mongols and their conquest. The Sultan book was about their lives and whatnot, and the book on the Mongols was about Genghis Khan and his conquest of all that land. But again, Age of Empires is the best because you get history from every perspective and every continent and every great nation that was conquering any empire. You actually have scenarios that you play, and it takes a long time to complete them, but you go through sections of history. So they'll have, for example, a great battle like the conquistadors. They actually did have conquistadors conquering the Mayas and the Aztecs, and you actually went through scenarios where you went through each step of what was going on. And believe it or not, the one representing the conquistadors was Hernan Cortez. Okay, he is the biggest. If Vlad Dracula was the oldest folklore of vampires that was historically accepted, Hernan Cortez would be the most known, the most unknown, the most known conquistador in history. And I mean, he's known by everybody, by the West. I mean, all of Europe. Everybody knows the name Hernan Cortez. If you don't remember, the first Pirates of the Caribbean with Johnny Depp, the cursed gold that turned Johnny Depp's after he got mutinated, or after the mutiny, when he got kicked out as the head sailor or head pirate, that group of pirates found Cortez's gold. That was Cortez's gold. I don't know if anybody remembers that little piece of history, but he talks about it. The head pirate and the entire pirates that had caught the curse. He says, it was because Montezuma, who was the Aztec king, cursed the gold that the Spanish stole from him, or were gonna steal from him. So that was the gold that Hernan Cortez stole. One thing that makes the conquistadors' conquest so unique is, first of all, they did go to the Caribbean. Again, Pirates of the Caribbean is what the movie is called. It was probably one of the biggest blockbuster films of all time. One of Johnny Depp's biggest movies. And believe it or not, it's over Hernan Cortez's gold in the Caribbean. Okay, Hernan Cortez went everywhere. He went to the Caribbean. He went to Latin America. He went everywhere. And and that is a cool thing. I mean, there really were real life pirates around. That was a realistic thing. The conquistadors were not considered pirates, and they were not considered quite so. In parts of the Caribbean, you have your pirates. It's pretty much pirates versus the English Navy, right? And the conquistadors weren't quite like the English Navy and weren't quite like the pirates. Something in the middle, because they weren't really two official governing like a proper military, and they weren't random crazy robbing pirates at the same time. So yeah, so that's how big the Cortez thing goes. Till this day, there was a very famous book written, a very, very, very famous book that I actually came across when I was very young. I was one of my teachers in elementary school that introduced me to it. And I actually read some passages out of there. And I think the Conquistadors was one of the passages that I read it there. This was a university level book. University kids had to study it. This book was called Guns, Germs, and Steel. Now I might have it wrong, but it might have been Germs, Guns, and Steel. I think it was Guns, Germs, and Steel. Okay, and they were basically, and the conquistadors were in there. Hernan Cortez and the conquistadors were in there. Hitler was there in the end too. They had about a 13-page excerpt from Hitler's book Mein Kampf. But I'm not talking about that right now. Just to kind of let you know that how much history this book had. This book was basically criticizing the Europeans. Like modern day and Pulitzer and Nobel Peace Prizes and everything. Everybody criticizes the Europeans. Everybody hates Europeans. Everybody criticizes them. So yeah, everybody. This entire book was talking about how the Europeans unfairly, with luck, unfair advantage, and unfairly took over all of the Americas. Okay, the Americas were full of indigenous people living there, right? And these guys took over the entire Americas really fast. Okay, so the book is just criticizing them, saying that they had guns and the indigenous didn't have guns. They had steel swords and the indigenous didn't have steel swords. Okay, they had guns, germs, and germs because of the smallpox in North America. I believe the British Navy brought over smallpox. And they killed like a lot of people from smallpox. Okay, so basically the book is trying to take away from the true tribute or the true or what they've truly earned in tribute or glory or whatever you want to call it. Though I don't think the conquistadors were really about glory. They weren't really about glory. These guys, the British were. The conquistadors really weren't about glory so much. I'm getting back into